The Great Reboot, how InfoSec professionals can come out of this mess better than before. On March 13th, my life changed. I was at the Red Sea. I was having a great time. Now, I was working, I was teaching a class, but it was beautiful. The weather was gorgeous. I was waking up early and running by the palm trees in the ocean. There were great restaurants and amazing seafood, and every night I was going out with a friend and having a great meal. I was taking vacation or holiday next in Jordan. I was going to fly to Oman. I was going to see Petra, the scenes from Raiders of the Lost Ark. I was going to go swim in the Dead Sea. I was really looking forward to this. Instead, there was an announcement that we might be closing the borders in the United States. I woke up at 3 in the morning. I didn't sleep very well. I had a flight at 5:30. I didn't want to miss it. The airport was closing. I got to the airport. I don't want to exaggerate and say it was a full refugee situation, but there was luggage abandoned in the street. There were people sitting on the floor that looked like they'd been there 2 or 3 days in the airport. And I know a lot of flights had been canceled. Once I got through customs, immigration, ticketing, all that stuff, it was a little calmer on the other side, but not exactly relaxed by any means. Once I got on the plane and the wheels took off, I breathed a sigh of relief, sort of. Two people in looked like full-out hazmat suits. There were nurses, a male and a female. This is the Middle East. Came down taking everyone's temperature. And I was like, what if somebody has a high temperature? We're like already in the air. I flew through Istanbul. Great airport, very modern, very nice, but it wasn't quite relaxed. It was sort of very chill. Nobody wanted to be there. Everyone wanted to get through there. And I was thinking, what if my flight gets canceled? They do get canceled. The Istanbul airport is in Europe, and supposedly we're closing the borders. Well, I got on the plane. I did make it home. Won't even mention what happened when I landed in Boston, but 90% of my work no longer existed. It had been postponed, canceled, or whatever on the flight home. I'm a consultant, and just things stopped. And I love to travel. It's a love of my life. It totally changed. And my life and the world became a very different place with lots of uncertainty going forwards. Now, who am I to talk about this? Well, I finished grad school in 86, got a job working in technology. 1990, I started working for myself, working in InfoSec. I was doing Kerberos way back then. A lot of different clients, ranging from a lot of startups, the Fortune 500, to government entities, which gets me all over the place. And I love to travel. I've got 3 books I've written, more is coming up, and I've been through some tough times before. The dot-com bubble bursting, certainly 9/11, when also flights stopped like they pretty much did now. 2008 recession. I even started my consulting business during a recession. Well, today is very different than any other times. Like, there's serious problems going on right now. And whether we survive or do well and so forth is a little iffy. Luck does play a role. I think to a large extent we make our luck. No, not entirely. But we can do things to maximize the probability of coming out of this, hopefully better than before. Now, this is absolutely not a feel-good talk. We're going to talk about concrete things you can do to weather the pandemic and other difficulties we have, and hopefully thrive both during and afterwards. So what can you do to maximize the probability? Well, preparation's obviously helpful. My biggest client, they're doing all right now. They're not doing as well as before, but they had actually planned quite literally for a pandemic. They had thought, what if suddenly we can't travel anymore? What if people aren't moving around? What if they're not getting on planes? But we can't plan retroactively, right? So we're going to be looking primarily going forwards. Now, in some ways, for some of us, this might be a chance for a fresh start. I'm looking at basically repositioning, redoing my business, changing some things as well as in my life. And even people in companies in some really hard hit areas and industries are doing well. Not all. My gym. I loved my gym. Small, local, friendly gym. I got back May 14th because flight was, I don't know, 30 hours with stopovers. And they sent out an email fairly quickly saying, hey, we're still open. We're pretty empty. We're following the hygiene rules and the CDC, everything. Come on in. And I was like, no way am I going there. Well, apparently everyone felt that way. And a little while longer, there was an email saying, our equipment's for sale. Don't worry, we won't charge you for this month. We're closed. Still, some companies are doing well. Now, we talk about airlines. Most years I've given United Airlines and partners, I don't know, $50,000, $80,000. Maybe I'm exaggerating, maybe I'm understating it, but a lot of money. It doesn't take a lot of business class tickets to the other side of the planet to add up quickly. I've given them $0 since March. In fact, last quarter, their revenue was down 90%. But still, Alaskan Airlines added new routes. Now, they must have been planning this ahead of time, right? But they didn't cancel it. They moved forwards. They must be doing at least okay. In furniture, right? Buying furniture is not an essential service, or buying furniture. You can sleep on that old bed or use that old couch. There's a chain in New England. If you're in New England, you probably know them, Jordan's Furniture, because they have very colorful advertisements. They opened a store right outside of Portland, Maine, the biggest furniture store in Maine. They actually opened it, I think it was August 3rd or 4th. Now, obviously, they must have been planning that ahead of time, but they carried on, so they must be doing okay. Now, I'd rather be an InfoSec professional in the airline business or the furniture business or a gym owner, or certainly in like the hospitality business, restaurants or hotels or bars. And some people say, hey, we're uniquely poised as InfoSec professionals. Yeah, I don't think so. I think we're somewhere between okay to great, right? We're better than most. Still, some of us are unemployed. Just today, I tweeted out 3 or 4 different sets of job openings because I know there's some of us are unemployed. We've been laid off or furloughed or whatever. I already mentioned 90% of my work disappeared overnight. Yesterday, I was talking to 2 friends. My friend Chris, his uncle passed away. It was definitely COVID. Another friend of mine, his best friend died. Now, he was in his 80s, but that doesn't mean his life was worth any less. People are definitely dying. We can't downplay the seriousness. It may be much worse than we think. Maybe it's not as bad. But just from very recently, right? Dr. Anthony Fauci, when you experience an outbreak, don't ever, ever underestimate the potential of the pandemic. Now, people like to say, we're all in the same boat. Yeah, I don't believe that. My boat's okay. My neighbor, my direct neighbor, similar field to us, his boat's not as good. Little bit older, he has pre-existing conditions. He's not in as good a boat. It might be the same storm, but he has a better chance of something bad happening to him than I do. And a lot of you are probably in better shape than me. I'm in my 50s. I wish I was in my 30s. I'd be less at risk. Still, whether we have something bad going on or not, we really have 2 choices, 2 different mindsets. I can and I can't. And we could just sit around and say, this is bad. I'm going to weather the storm. I'm going to do nothing. But if you have a positive outlook saying, a good chance we could come out of this better than before. Positive thinking itself doesn't do anything. You have to do some good things. This requires planning and focused effort, emphasis on focus, knowing that some things aren't going to go well. Even in the best of times, we're going to have failures, hopefully partial failures along the way. Now, many of my friends, many of my colleagues saying, well, it's impossible to come out of this better than before, or I can't do anything significant now. First of all, you've probably done some things that you considered to be impossible at some point, and now you just do them all the time. It's not a big deal. Very concrete example. It used to be thought that for a human to run a mile in less than 4 minutes was physically impossible. Athletes thought it, coaches thought it, medical doctors thought it, and so forth. Then this guy named Roger Bannister, did it. Supposedly impossible. Guess what? Lots of people did it after him. As soon as we knew it wasn't impossible, others did it. His record didn't last that long, about a month and a half. Now it's been done by way over 1,000 people, maybe up to 1,500 now, including high school athletes that aren't remotely near the peak of their performance, right? It always seems impossible until it's done. And I love that quote from Ford. It says, whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right. So let's talk about what doesn't work, okay? Just dreaming. Okay, vague plans with no action. Now, there's a reason I have a picture of a piano there. I own a piano. I inherited it. Now, nobody died, just people were downsizing in the family. I theoretically know how to play the piano. I can read music. I took lessons when I was a kid. I came back. I'm like, I'm not traveling for a few weeks. Okay, it's turned into a few months, but I was like, I'll just sit at the piano every day. I'll play for 5 or 10 minutes. When I walk by, I'll sit. Maybe when I have my coffee in the morning or a drink at night. A vague plan, right? No actual plan, just kind of vague. And I haven't sat once at the piano. As a matter of fact, the piano stool I just looked today is still covered in, can I say junk crap? I can't even sit at the piano. It's all kind of paperwork and stuff there. I know other friends that said, well, I'm going to get in shape. I'm not commuting to work. A good friend of mine used to drive 45 minutes each way, saving an hour and a half. He's like, I'll just go for a walk every morning. Yeah, he hasn't done anything, right? Just vague plans, just dreaming doesn't do anything. Complaining. Some of us have legitimate things to complain about. I was sick this summer. Thought I had COVID. Turns out it was negative. I just had something else. I could have complained, right? And of course, everyone's saying, take care of yourself, get plenty of sleep, stay hydrated. It's like, yeah, of course you should, but that's not going to do anything. In some ways, I hate positive thinking because many people think that's all that you need. And positive thinking alone doesn't do anything. You're going to do some actual good things to come out of this better. You could take a class. I have taken, I think, 5 classes so far since that March flight home. I took 2 technical security classes. One was on risk management. One was Chris Crowley's Security Operations Center class. I took a class on professional bartending with my son. I took a class on video production for consultants and entrepreneurs. I've taken a bunch of classes, some commercial offerings. Now, this doesn't have to cost money. Some of the conferences have relatively cheap training. I love Coursera. Coursera has free training from hundreds, if not thousands, of universities worldwide. I took a great crypto class from Stanford. I took another class from Princeton, all in the last few years. MIT OpenCourseWare. All of the classes from the Massachusetts Institute of Technology are free, all of them. Udemy. I've taken some great stuff from Udemy, including some rock stars like Guy Kawasaki and Seth Godin, and they've got cheap classes on everything from Wireshark to applying makeup. I could write a new class. I teach a lot, right? You could write a class on something. You could learn a foreign language. I'm up to 183 days solid, I think, on Duolingo studying Spanish. I was going to go in April with Chris Crowley to Oaxaca, Mexico on a mezcal tour. That obviously didn't happen. You learn to cook, right? Study mixology. I'm no joking. I'm in a serious study of tiki drinks these days while I'm home. You'd learn to play the piano, you'd write a book or read a book. It's lots of possible good things you could do. There's only one problem. You can't do everything. You just can't. You can't spread yourself too thin. That just doesn't work. It's not like a buffet where you're going to eat a little of this and a little of that, and you'll end up having eating too much. Well, in this case, you'll end up doing a little of everything and really not accomplishing much. Since you can't do everything, I strongly suggest you have a not to do list. Here's my list, updated today. Now, I did write a new class, but on my list is not to write another new class. I really want to write a class on cryptography. I'd love to write a 5 or 6 day class. I've got the background, I've got advanced degrees in mathematics, but I'm not going to do it. Why? Because it would take so much time and can't do everything. I've decided not to learn to play that piano right now. Later this fall, maybe winter, when I'm inside more, I may do it then, but it's on my not to do list. Getting in better shape. I'm not doing that. Now, I have lost about 2.5 stones over the last 2 years, and that's like an obscure imperial measurement that amuses me. That's about 35 pounds. I have lost 35 pounds. I was pretty big. I'm still big, but I'm trying to maintain this. Now, I gave this talk once before, a month ago, and people really wanted me to run something based on this talk, some sort of a challenge or a short class, like make people pay $7 or $97 or $17 just so that they're vested, and have people actually come up with a plan and just go through it as a group. I love that idea. Still a serious thought, but I'm not doing it right now because you can't do everything. Now, I would suggest you come up with a not to do list. These are things you want to do. It would be really cool if you did, but you're not doing them, at least not now, because you can't do everything. Now, don't put things on this list that you're not that tempted to do. So, not on my not to do list is to take a class in ballet. I don't have a big desire in taking a ballet class. It would be pretty cool. I'm a big clumsy guy. I'd probably end up being less clumsy, and it would be a really good thing, but there's no big temptation, so I'm not going to litter up my not to do list with that. I suggest you take no more than 5 minutes. Just jot some things down, right? Do it in 2 minutes. It doesn't have to be perfect. Now, let's talk about what worked earlier in this pandemic. Still does to some extent. A sprint, a focused effort over a short term. So I'm in this high-end business group. It's got a bunch of consultants like me and other entrepreneurs, and they had these 17-day sprints. Now, why they came up with 17 days, I don't know. There's probably some backstory. And we'd all pick something we're going to work on intensively for 17 days. That would be something seriously good to get done. So I did a very significant update to my successful InfoSec consulting class. I worked on it every day for 17 days. Actually, I think it was 15 days when I was done, and a couple of days of proofreading. I love to read. I don't read that much, and I like to read physical books. When I was home in the beginning, I was reading a minimum of 2 books a week. I got a stack of books to go through, and I like physical books. A friend of mine lives about 30 minutes away. He enhanced his home lab, and he played in it every single night for 2 weeks. He still does, just not every single night. He actually took the free webinar. It's online now from Black Hills Information Security on building a home lab, and he enhanced his. Now, sprints work, right? There's some current ones going on. Friends from my former gym, when it shut down this August, they started a Get Fit in August challenge. You had to commit to showing up at least 2 days a week. They're doing it 5 days a week, outdoors, very socially distanced. Worked so well, they're doing it again in September. I didn't join because I was busy doing other stuff. I'm a big James Altucher fan. He's kind of a crazy man. Google his podcast. 2 recent Fridays, he's had a 30-day write a book challenge. You can't write a book in 30 days. Well, he convinced me you can. You can actually get a published book in 30 days. Guy named Russell Brunson, he's a marketing guy. You probably don't know him. He's got a 30-day funnel hacking challenge, right? So you can do some things in short periods of time. But we're not in a sprint anymore. When I came back March 13th, I didn't still expect bad things to be going on in September, right? A marathon requires a lot more planning, whether it's an actual literal running marathon or more of a metaphoric marathon. Now, I ran an actual marathon once, a little over a year ago. It required planning, right? I trained for months and months, and during the marathon, there was a lot of planning going on as well, where I was going to stop for water, where I was going to run faster, slower, and I actually able to finish this thing. Well, you can certainly get more significant new things accomplished in a longer time frame than just in a few weeks. And if you're trying to work at sprint pace for months, you're going to burn yourself out. Now, just some working definitions. Short term, maybe now to maybe a few months out. Long term, 6 months to maybe decades. For me, I define long term as 18 plus months. Right? Whatever definition works for you. Now, I love these quotes from Winston Churchill. Right? Plans are worthless. Planning is priceless. It is the planning process that's important. The plan is not going to work the way you do it. There's various sayings like no plan survives contact with the enemy, or no plan survives contact with reality. You got to be flexible. I've come up with an actual plan, and I'm going to talk about creating an actual plan to come out better than before. I think you should create an actual plan as well. Now, planning's not hard. I've always been a horrible planner. I just haven't planned. I've just kind of go with the flow, and it's worked well for me. It's interesting because I've done lots of planning for others professionally for a long time. I do a lot of strategic security planning for my clients. So I am a good planner. I just never did it in my personal life. Well, as soon as I had kids, I had to do more planning. And my ex-wife requires planning as well, right? To make everything work. And I've always didn't want to plan in my personal life because I'm like, yeah, it's just going to like remove freedom. I just like to have flexibility. I've decided planning actually creates freedom. It gives us some structure. Within that structure, you have a lot of freedom, and you can change that structure, right? Because you're in charge. Because things will change and evolve. And I honestly believe planning helps you to see possibilities you might not have otherwise. Now, when we're talking about planning, we're talking about the future, right? We need to know where we are now, a reasonable assessment. The past matters to some extent, how you got to where you are. And, companies will have a so-called vision, a big picture goal. For a company, sometimes their vision is, we might describe it as what they want to be when they grow up. Whether you use the term vision or long-term goal or big picture goal, I think we should as well, just like companies do. Now realize you may have a vision, and the further out that vision is, that thing you want to do or accomplish or move towards, the further out it is, the fuzzier things can become. Right? The less sure we are about the future, the further out it is. And so I like to say there isn't really one future. There's all these possible futures. And you might say, this is what I want to do. Something else may happen. There may be some alternate future that happens. It might even be better. It might just be different, right? There's uncertainty when we go out. Now, the one thing people don't talk about is the past is fuzzy too. And the past matters. Further back you go, the less certain the past is. I know what I had for lunch yesterday. 3 weeks ago, I'm not so sure. We're pretty sure George Washington had wooden teeth, right? Pretty sure. But did Genghis Khan have teeth? I don't know, right? The further back you go, the fuzzier things are. So here's what we're going to look at. First of all, the past. Not that far back. Assessing where we were pre-COVID. Assessing as well as we can, because there's a lot of uncertainty, where we are now. A very small number of big picture or longer term goals or vision, if you like that word. Some people like that term, some don't. Now, this isn't the bucket list. This isn't, I want to go on a safari in South Africa and I want to go bungee jumping and I want to, no. Just a few things, not like a bucket list. And some smaller supporting goals. Now, the smaller supporting goals, doesn't matter if they succeed or not, they're only there to support our big picture or longer term goals. And the temptation, even if you restrict yourself to a small number of big picture goals, to put all these smaller supporting goals in, all of these possible things. Remember, the concept of the not to do list, as well as your actual not to do, you can't do everything. And some planning tips for success, or for, let's say, avoiding failure, if we don't want to. Planning for success is positive. Avoiding failure, I think that's also positive, but it doesn't sound it. So I can't tell you about you, but I can tell you about me. Okay. March 12th, that's when I changed my flight to fly back the next day, right before the world suddenly changed. I had a really good and stable income. I wasn't making $1 million a year. I was doing fine. I love what I do, and I work hard, and we get paid pretty well in this field. I had a great lifestyle that I really enjoyed. I love teaching. I love consulting. I was doing a lot of this. My favorite places in the world, probably, at least right now, Amsterdam. They know me in more bars in Amsterdam than anywhere else by name. Brussels, I love Brussels. And I'm of Greek origin. Went to Greece twice last year, fallen in love with Greece. I'd be going back this fall if things were different. And I was spending weeks in these three places and generally working there too and getting paid and taking time off. I was seeing my family a lot. Family's important to me. More would have been better. More is difficult sometimes, especially with teenagers. I had lots of flexibility and freedom. So where am I now? Well, there's lots of uncertainty. My income's recovered. I don't have work lined up 9 months out. I have guaranteed paid work into next month. That's it. I have plans in December and January. They're not concrete. I have a very different lifestyle, right? Almost all work is remote. I had one in-person meeting that was not too far away. Spending time, two different places, New Hampshire and Maine. I'm kind of multi-home. You can drive between the two places. A lot less flexibility and freedom. I had a long weekend off with a friend. We're like, what are we going to do? I was going to go somewhere with my girlfriends. Like, what are we going to do? I want to go to Quebec City. Guess what? The border is closed. There's not that much flexibility. I have both more time because I'm not traveling. Also less time. I got 3 teenagers at home, or let's say 2.5 teenagers at home. So how would you summarize your life and work pre-COVID and your life and work today? Now, don't spend a lot of time on this. I would suggest 2-3 minutes, no more than 5. Just put something down. The attempt is not to be perfect, right? You can go back and change this afterwards, improve it. So I'm going to talk about my big picture goals and coming up with some for you. So the first one is professional. I do a lot of teaching. I enjoy teaching. I enjoy teaching because I think I'm providing the most value doing teaching. I still do some pretty, down and dirty hands-on technical work for sure as well. Some of my teaching is very technical as well. I'm focusing more on my consulting and entrepreneurial classes in InfoSec. And I want to teach primarily my own classes. Now, the last time, I know I'm remote now, but the last time I was physically there, I was teaching classes for the SANS Institute. And I love their classes and I love teaching them, but I want to teach primarily my own. I don't want to stop doing what I'm doing. I just want to do a little less of it. So that's one big picture goal. Okay, how am I going to accomplish that? What are my lower level supporting goals? Well, I've got a team redesigning my website and a new one going up now, which I'm doing a video a week. This should already be done. I've outsourced this, but things often take longer than we plan. Running my InfoSec consulting class soon. I've run it once. I'm probably going to be running it again soon. I just finished a solid first draft of my next book, tentatively called InfoSec Consulting 101. But guess what? It's just too big. So it's probably going to be more than one book. Also, I'm pretty sure I want to run a virtual conference this fall on consulting and entrepreneurism or entrepreneurship in InfoSec. And my plan is, I think it's going to be totally free to attend. Maybe a small fee for recordings of sessions because it's going to cost me some money to pull this off. So these are some of my supporting goals. I want to continue to do my work with SANS, including running my consulting classes with them. We pulled those, joint decision because of the pandemic right now. I'm submitting some of my classes, including my consulting classes, to conferences. Supposed to be teaching one of my classes with the ISC Squared Security Congress, which is it next month or is it November? I'm not sure. I'm not doing that because they've really scaled back. We're talking about the next year. I'm going to be submitting to the Wild West Hacking Fest. I've got good friends there, so hopefully they'll take that. BrewCon in Brussels. That one's difficult because I have good friends there and they see my names on something and they recuse themselves and people never heard me look at it. Black Hat's a possibility. It's a long shot. And I'm open to ideas. I'm creating lots of free resources to help people and to help me with marketing. Right? I love giving talks like this. I'm doing a bunch of webinars. I may have some sort of coaching or mentoring or mastermind groups in the future, although no immediate plans. So I have a bunch of supporting goals. Now, let's say some of these just don't happen for whatever reason. Does that matter? No, they're only there to support the big picture goal. I want to teach primarily my own classes. Now, I have two other big picture goals. One's going to seem a little strange and a little personal. I'm not sure I'm 100% comfortable discussing it, but I'm going to. My second, I want to spend more time with family. Family is very important to me. I have 3 teenagers. One of them is 20 years old. He's still a teenager in my mind. My 17-year-old, on the other hand, she's been an adult since she's been 12. Want to spend more time with them. This is hard because they're teenagers. They often have cooler things to do than hang out with dad. And my mother's 87. Who knows how long she'll be around? Hopefully another decade plus, right? So supporting goals, getting my kids involved in my consulting business. My middle daughter, this has worked out pretty well. I've got a new free version of my InfoSec Rockstar booklet, not the whole book, but the booklet it's going to be called something like InfoSec Rockstar 2020 and beyond or something like that, or pandemic. She's helping me write that. That's working out great. My son, who is quite entrepreneurial and is actually going to a business college, yeah, kind of hard to get him involved in anything. He has all these ideas and doesn't listen. So mixed success. Definitely taking classes with my kids. I took a professional bartending in-person class recently with my son. He wants to be a professional bartender to make money going through college. Like, I'll take the class with you. It was kind of fun, although I never want to be a professional bartender, I don't think. Teaching my son to fly fish. My 2 daughters are very athletic. We've been running together, not marathons, and they put up with me. I'm like really slow compared to them. My mother's stubborn, right? She insists on like going out and she's not isolating that well, but I'm doing my best, doing the shopping for her to help her out and just to spend more time with her. I'm cooking with my middle daughter. My middle daughter has gone vegan, at least for a while. So guess what? I'm vegan 1 meal a day and I cook stuff with her and we have fun. So let's say some of these supporting goals don't work out. Let's say, for example, I never teach my son to fly fish. We never go again. Or my middle daughter and I don't cook ever again. Does that mean I'm not spending more time with family? No, these are just, things to help do that. Now, my next one, and this one is definitely maybe a little weird. I want to have a more peaceful life. And I put peaceful in quotes because we might define that in different ways. I know some of you probably know me personally, and my life is chaotic. I seem to thrive on chaos, but I've tired of it. I do have some supporting goals. As of today, I've meditated for 30 something days. I think it's 34 solid. I have no idea if I'm doing it right or if it's helping, but I'm going to keep it up for a while. I'm really good at working under pressure and getting things done at the last minute because I am a world-class procrastinator sometimes. I'm trying to get work done ahead of time. I've always tried to do way too much. And boy, my not to do list helps with this. I'm reading peaceful books, however you might define peaceful books, right? Peaceful instead of motivating books that try to convince me to do more. My youngest daughter, she's 16. She's upstairs right now. She doesn't get along with her mother well all the time. They fight a lot, not always. So she's living primarily with me. It's just more peaceful. Those are my three big goals. Now, I would suggest you think about big picture goals for you. A small number, maybe three, no more than five. Now, you can jot down, 10, 12 ideas. And even if you don't pick one of these big picture goals as one of the ones you're concentrating on, that doesn't mean you're not making progress on them. You're just not focusing on them. So here's some big picture goals people mentioned from the one time before I gave this talk. A bunch of people said they want to get in shape, right? We're not the most fit necessarily in this field because we tend to sit and look at computers a lot. I had three people tell me they wanted to learn digital forensics. One of them is not remotely involved in forensics. She's just interested and just wants to study it and hopefully learn a bunch and maybe move into that field or see if she wants to. I have one friend actually in town who's wants to be a consultant and he's working towards that, doing a number of things to prepare. I've had one person tell me they want to get much more involved in capture the flag competitions, both to get better at it, to see if possibly they want to move into pen testing, and they also want to build their own CTFs. They think that would be fun. That's one of their big picture goals. One person said they wanted to consolidate their life. And I put that in quotes because I'm not exactly sure what they mean. I know how I interpret that, but our goals are personal, right? Now, remember, you need not just goals, but you need a plan. And some metrics are good too along the way to see how you're doing. Now, some success tips for planning. First of all, a small number of big picture goals. Write them down. I like physical paper. Doesn't matter how you write them down. I'll talk about exactly how I do this in a second. A small number. I got three right now. Might change them in 3 months. Might change them in 6 months. I do review and possibly change, usually on a quarterly basis for me. Now, very important, you have to look at them regularly. I'm going to claim, and I'm lying only a little bit, that I look on a daily basis. I try to look on a daily basis. It doesn't always happen. Now, people ask exactly what I use. I use something called Michael Hyatt's Full Focus Planner. It is a hardbound book, a physical planner. And I probably use 10% of the pages in it. But I love it. I've been using that for almost 2 years. Russell Eubanks, who some of you may know since he's in our field and spends a lot of time teaching and consulting and speaking, he's the one that turned me on it. I love that. I also use Evernote. I use the free version of Evernote. I have a copy of my big picture goals and most of my smaller picture supporting goals. I'm using the free version right now, and it synchronizes between my laptop and my cell phone. And so I was yesterday or the day before, I was at the dentist. I had like 3 minutes. I just went and I reviewed the goals. And I looked like, yeah, no surprise. It's what was there last time, but it helps remind me and move me forwards. Now, remember, smaller picture supporting goals, right? They're important mainly as support. Some of them may totally fail or have partial success, and that's okay. Now, expect some failures and difficulties along the way for sure. Absolutely. Just don't give up. A friend of mine wanted to get fit, or they want to get less unhealthy. It was their last ditch effort at losing weight before weight loss surgery, stomach stapling or bands or whatever they got. They wanted a doctor assisted diet, a liquid diet. They lost 80 pounds. And one day they ate a potato chip. One potato chip. They're like, oh, I failed. And guess what? They bought, I'm not exaggerating, a case of potato chips. And they had potato chips in every single room, an open bag. They gave up because there was a failure. That's a partial failure. And yeah, they ended up having weight loss surgery, which was not the ideal scenario. Big picture goals, if they're significant, they're going to be a lot harder or maybe take longer to achieve, right? If you got a big picture goal and you achieve it tomorrow, it's not really a big picture goal. And success could be possibly a very different form. So the first big picture goal I said was to teach mainly my own classes. What if tomorrow I get a call from an old friend that has some amazingly exciting sounding startup and I dive into that full time as well? That might be even better, right? And let's say very successful, a very different form. You're saying love and fall in love with the F word, which is fail. There's going to be a lot of failures along the way. Thomas Edison supposedly had over 10,000 failures at looking for a filament for a light bulb that was actually practical, would actually last more than a few seconds and be economical enough to be mass produced. Could have said they were failures or they were experiments where you kept learning things that didn't work along the way, because you're going to learn a lot of things that don't work before you learn what works. Right? You're going to have things that don't work along the path to more success. Now, not everyone agrees with me here, but I think you only have one life. Some people separate their business life and their personal life. And yes, I do believe in having some distinction between the two, although you really only have one life. So there was one day last weekend where I literally didn't look at a computer or email for 36 hours. Man, that was really hard for me, right? But really, we have one life. We have a business life and a personal life. And they're blurred more than ever for many of us. For me, they've been blurred forever because I'm a consultant. Your long-term goals, I think they should be both personal and business. Now, you may focus on one area instead of another area, depending on what's going on in your life. That's fine. And I always overestimate what I can get done in the short term. I think as general, we overestimate what we can get done in the short term. I know today I had a list of things I wanted to get done. I actually got them done before now, but I also woke up at 5 in the morning because I fell asleep on the couch last night at 9. Usually I do not get done what I want to get done in a day. That's short term. But I think we greatly underestimate what we can get done in the long term. And here's a very scary thought to me. What would you do if you thought you couldn't fail? What kind of long-term goals or visions would you have if you're like, I can probably do anything I want? This scares me. I find this to be a scary thought. Sometimes I don't even want to think about this. Other times I spend time thinking, in the perfect world, I can do almost anything. What do I want to do? Do I want to be the first man to walk on Mars? Or that's kind of crazy thinking. But, really, what could you accomplish? What would you do if you thought, it's almost certainly going to work. I can't fail. And that scares me. But I find that to be very motivating to think about. So feel free to share your goals with me, right? In progress. Email me, follow me on Twitter, or feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn and so forth. And hopefully someday we can get back to normal life. Some days, hopefully between, I have a spare day when I'm working, I'll be able to go see the Taj Mahal again. Hopefully someday I'll have horrible jet lag again and say, I may be complaining, but it's pretty cool. I woke up in Amsterdam all of a sudden. So thank you, everybody.